Good morning, everybody. It is Friday. We have a great show coming your way today on GoJo and Golic. So the Ravens get it done last night. We will talk about their win. We will talk about what's next for the Bengals. Also, we will preview this weekend's college football slate. We got the SEC on center stage and Soundbite Beef. We will go through and listen to some sounds from around the world of sports before the weekend to be. All that and more. Great guests coming up on GoJo and Golic.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to GoJo and Golic. Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr., Jesse Cofield here. We are presented by Campbell's Chunky, soup that eats like a meal, and we got a great show for you today. As always, download, subscribe, rate, review us, leave us a 5-star rating, and check us out live Monday through Friday from 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern on the DraftKings Network, which now includes the GoJo and Golic YouTube channel that just went live yesterday. So make sure you go on over to that, subscribe. The show is going to stream there if you're looking for it as one of the many places from 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern. We know plenty of people have been watching us on the DraftKings YouTube channel, and we understand that at times can be hard to find, and so we have decided to make it easier. We'll have a bunch of side quest content coming out there as we go through the rest of football season. It means I'm going to have to explain YouTube to my dad, which is an exciting new stress in my life to go along with all the technology there, which my dad is already struggling with because he's back out in South Bend right now, and he's realized that the TV monitors he usually has behind him that he thinks are working right now and can see are actually vampire monitors when it comes to working off the laptop that he's on today.
See, I don't understand this. These TVs, they're on. They have the DK logo and the GoJo and Golic logo like when I would do my show here in South Bend. They're on right now. But we can't see them because I don't have the normal setup. I have a computer, and they're telling me the computer camera doesn't pick up the TV. Why? It's a camera. It's picking me up. We can see me, right? Why can't it see the TV logos behind me? I don't understand that. And the whole YouTube thing. Listen, it doesn't change what I do, right? I did an interview when you and I were starting this show, and someone was asking me, how does it feel you were on radio and TV, and now it's radio and streaming? I'm like, doesn't make a difference to me. I just talk into the microphone. Wherever they distribute it, they distribute it. I'm not going to change, but I'll be damned if these TVs aren't showing up. This truly is bizarre. Truly is blowing my mind. I don't know if I can concentrate on the show.
We believe you, Senior. We believe the cameras are on. Okay? They're definitely on.
Let's get you to bed now, Grandpa, okay? We know it's been a long week.
No, GoJo, we're not going to get him to bed. Let's get him to run for Congress.
We can bounce that idea off Peter Keating. He's going to join us later in the show here from the Underdog. Been a while since we talked to the Underdog guys here, so excited to take a look back at some interesting trends and looks at the 2-7 teams in the NFL right now. Because as we'll get to with some of the wild card pictures, especially in the AFC later on, not anybody is really out of it at this point, given what's going on there. But last night, Dad, they're not out of it by any means. But, man, tough blow for the Cincinnati Bengals to yet again have a late lead on the Baltimore Ravens on Thursday Night Football and yet again find a way to blow it, this time on the behalf, and I know you love this, Dad, on the back of a perfect Lamar Jackson fourth quarter. Lamar Jackson last night recorded a perfect passer rating, a 158.3 in the fourth quarter, where he threw for 197 yards and 3 touchdowns, both personal highs for him in the fourth quarter, to now go for the season sweep against the Cincinnati Bengals. So how did Cincinnati find a way to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory in a game where Jamar Chase went for over 250 yards?
I mean, we know the offense for Baltimore is great, but the defense was really stepping in. Well, really what happened is the offense for Cincinnati took care of the ball. I mean, in the first half, they had the ball for almost 20 minutes. And 11:45, I think, was the time for Baltimore. They didn't have the ball that much to do anything with it. And the defense was playing well. I think Lamar Jackson had 71 passing yards in the first half. The defense was stepping up for Cincinnati, but then they kind of reverted back. Baltimore had 231 of their 389 yards in the fourth quarter. So the offense picked up. The defense for Cincinnati imploded. The secondary for the back seven for Baltimore continues to implode and now has an injury to deal with Kyle Hamilton, which we'll get into.
Oh.
But this was a series sweep for Baltimore that probably should have gone to the Bengals. I mean, that's why it's tough with Cincinnati sitting at 4-6, and you just mentioned the 2-7 teams. It's tough to count them out because, man, they can score with anybody. You know, that offense with Jamar Chase, who's proving like he's the best non-quarterback offensive player in the league. I mean, he is unbelievable what he's doing. But Cincinnati's got to be sick. I mean, we can go through the 2-point conversion. Was there a holding call? Did Burrow get hit in the face? I mean, you know, there are plays you can pick out for the game. But basically, they had the biggest lead on a Lamar Jackson-led team since November 7th of 2021. That's the last time that Baltimore led with Lamar on the field, trailed by at least 14 points. They trailed by Minnesota 24-10 in that game and came back to win at 34-31 like they came back to win this game. So Baltimore's not used to being down 2 scores, but, man, they came back.
But when they've been the best since 2021 in the NFL. They've got 3 wins when trailing by 14 or more, including last night, which is the most in the NFL over that span. And Marlon Humphrey was saying it after the game, and it's true. As long as Lamar Jackson lives and breathes on the field right now, Baltimore's got a chance. Offensively, yes, it got off to a slow start, and Lou Anarumo and the Cincinnati Bengals defense seemed to have done enough to slow down and confuse them, mixing up coverages, doing things on the back end, and bothering Lamar enough in the pocket. Now, they couldn't get him down, which proved to be pretty bad later on one of the most impressive scrambles we've ever seen. That you're right, Dad. Really, the game changed after Cincinnati had the turnover, a forced fumble on a run play in the second half that all of a sudden kickstarted the Baltimore party, where you had, Wallace that makes the run down the sideline, the run after catch at receiver for Baltimore, where great play by the offense and awesome points on the board, but, Dad, some horrific angles and tackling by that Cincinnati defense as he tightrope walked his way to like a 70-yard touchdown.
Yeah, it was 84 yards. Tylan Wallace ran a quick out, caught it and was on the sideline where the defender can use the sideline as a defender and push him out of bounds. He stiff-armed two players and was inches from the sideline, and those players couldn't push him 6 inches to his left and push him out of bounds. It was a great play, great stiff arms, but horrific tackling by Cincinnati for a guy it's one thing to get juked in the middle of the field, but when you didn't even get juked on the sideline, you just got stiff armed on the sideline, and it wasn't Derrick Henry doing the stiff arm. At least you could understand that a little more. It was Tylan Wallace. I mean, no disrespect, but he doesn't have the stiff arm that Derrick Henry has, but it was good enough against the Cincinnati defense. So big play there. We can talk about Jamar Chase's a big night as well. He had big play after big play. But to your point about the Cincinnati defense, they did make Lamar move some, but they had no sacks and just 4 quarterback hits. Now, a lot of that is Lamar being able to move. I mean, Lamar,
right,
just his ability to escape and then either obviously run or pass is well, it's why he's a 2-time MVP. You're going to be a 3-time MVP. But you look at these two games. The first game, there were 9 touchdowns between the two quarterbacks, 5 for Burrow, 4 for Lamar. In this game, there were 8. There were 17 touchdown passes in the two games.
And it didn't look like it was trending that way in the first half. As you mentioned, the first half was ball possession and dreck on offense by Lamar Jackson and the Ravens. This was all backloaded in the second half of this one, too.
Oh, it was amazing. Now you knew they were going to eventually start to score. There was just too many big play making players on both teams, and it's exactly what happened. We thought, we're not going to get a game like the first one, which was 41-38 in overtime. Well, we got pretty damn close. Cincinnati, I mean, they again have to be sick, and much like we talked about, Todd Bowles should have gone for 2 last week. I think the Cincinnati did exactly what they should do. Go for 2. Now, you could question the play call. Before there was a timeout, they had Jamar Chase one-on-one out wide left with no over-the-top help. He was just flat out one-on-one on the 2-point play. There was a timeout called. They changed formation. They motion Chase that way again, and they throw the ball to Tanner Hudson. Now, again, you think you're going to throw to the open guy, but boy, if you had Jamar Chase in a one-on-one situation, you think you give him a shot for the ball.
Yeah, you'd think you would. I understand the strategy in that situation. There's 30 seconds left in the game. You got one timeout. You might as well get the most information possible if you're going to put all your chips in the basket on that one play. Get them to show their hand on defense. See if you can get them into their second best look for something like that. But I'm with you. No problem with them going for 2. We talked about this exact scenario from over the weekend. And so Zach Taylor and company putting his trust in his quarterback and his offense that had been winning the game for them most of that day to go out there and win it on one play as opposed to having to go to war with Lamar Jackson for an overtime period seems like smart business for me. They found out last time how bad overtime can go with the Baltimore Ravens. So no issues for me in that decision. Lots of complaints on the Bengals side, Dad, about the penalties that weren't called on Joe Burrow earlier on that drive. You had what looked like a drive-by face mask that didn't get called. They get a little bit of revenge on that later on as a face mask gets called on the back end on Marlon Humphrey. And then on that final play, there had been a roughing the passer before that on that drive, but Joe Burrow looks like he got grabbed in the face mask again. People saying Mike Gesicki got held. I didn't buy the Gesicki holding as much. I thought that was a real sell job by him that tried to look good.
Exactly.
But the missed face mask stuff, in this league, the way that they protect quarterbacks and the status that Joe Burrow has, I'm stunned they didn't throw the flag for a player of that caliber, considering how much they go over the top protecting that position.
Yeah, I was a little surprised. I'm glad they didn't, and I'm with you with Gesicki because he had an underhook on the defender. He was trying to sell that holding call, so I'm fine with that. And a few plays earlier, they got a face mask down the field. They got a face mask down the field, did Cincinnati, legitimately, and then a roughing the passer call against Baltimore where the defender landed on Joe Burrow. They got 30 yards in penalties to help on that drive. And listen, I think that, did the face mask get hit? Yes, but I'm kind of happy they didn't throw the flag. I mean, just for touching a face mask. I would hate for that to give the Cincinnati Bengals another chance. And I have no horse in the race. I'm a former defender, so I have a problem with some of these calls. But I was kind of glad they didn't call just kind of a he's going to block the pass, and he didn't grab the face mask and pull it. He just hit the face mask.
Yep. They let him play a physical game last night. On the perimeter, the battles between receivers and defensive backs is pretty physical, and I'm glad that it didn't devolve into too much of a flag fest like we usually see on Thursday Night Football. Dad, I think the big takeaways from this one, right? The Bengals still live dogs because the offense is that good. Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow are playing sensational football. But on the other side, for the Baltimore Ravens coming off of this, the defense is getting scary, man. And you mentioned it, the injury to Kyle Hamilton in the second half of that game, seeing him in street clothes and a walking boot, whatever the news is today is going to go a long way in informing the Ravens' second half of the year. Because I get they went out and traded for Tre'Davious White at the trade deadline. I don't know how much that's going to afford you in 2024 after what we've seen so far. And the back end of that defense, Dad, just looks lost. I mean, there were plays where you saw the one Jamar Chase long touchdown after the Ravens took the lead, where the safety just sort of like, went for, I said it was like me going for a user pick in EA College Football 25. Just looked like he had gotten completely lost in the play. And this is on a night where the front seven finally got pressure, Dad. 25 pressures and 3 sacks for Baltimore up front for Zach Orr's unit, who at some point there's going to have to be a Zach Orr conversation, right? Like, you already brought Dean Pease in to try and help steady the ship, and this is just a team that I get you lost coaches, I get you lost players from last year, but the wild swing from one of the greatest defenses we've seen in modern history to now whatever this defense is this year, who is their clear Achilles heel and will keep every team with a viable passing attack in games against the Baltimore Ravens, something's going to have to change. And I heard Marlon Humphrey when he come out and defended Zach Orr, but at some point you got to have them in position, and it seems like that's not the case right now.
Yeah, I mean, how much goes to the coach? How much to the players? You look at the 5-yard touchdown pass to Jamar Chase at the end of the game. You got 2 players covering a flat and one not dropping back. And Joe Burrow made a great throw over the defender. I mean, it was a great throw, but you had 2 defenders covering a receiver in the flat. I mean, that can't happen. So is that, I'm sure they work on that in practice. So was that just user error of the player not dropping back?
I guess that's what I'm saying, though, is at some point that all does fall on coaching, because while they lost, like Geno Stone was on the other side of the field last night. Patrick Queen plays in Pittsburgh now. You don't have on the defensive line anymore Jadeveon Clowney. There are misses, but none of the guys I just mentioned are Ray Lewis and Ed Reed that walked out the door. You've got largely, as we talked about this offseason, the same bones of a defense that was one of the most formidable in the NFL. The clearest difference is coaching. And so I don't think it's wrong to point to that and say, hey, Zach Orr's going to have to show a little more if he wants to keep going with this. This is an organization that's going to give him every chance and should. I appreciate loyalty. We don't like people losing their jobs. But at some point, it's a bottom line business. And right now, the bottom line is Baltimore's defense is going to keep everyone they play in these games. And if they're not careful, will be the reason they waste one of the best quarterback seasons we've ever seen from their quarterback and one of the best offensive seasons we've seen since the greatest show on turf.
Well, that's the truth. I mean, and it's wild to say about a Baltimore defense, which has been so good. And you're right. Listen, when you're playing this bad, everybody has to look in the mirror, from the coaches on down to the players, because it's just, again, they went into the game bottom of the barrel up against the pass at 280 yards a game, and they gave up 428 passing yards to Burrow. I mean, it's just they look like, I don't know if it's just miscues. They look lost. They're just getting beat one-on-one, but it's consistently happened throughout the season.
How do you let Jamar Chase, without T. Higgins, go off for 250-plus yards? Like, I heard them talking about it in the postgame on Amazon's postgame set, and it's true. You got to make anybody else beat you. Like poor Richard Sherman. Dad, we always see you weeping for modern defense at times and what happens to some of these roughers. I thought Richard Sherman was legitimately going to cry on set for the state of the defensive back play in this game.
It's just, listen, it's awful. There is nothing more you can say that it's awful. And to your point, and you're right, that may cost them one of the great players in this league, one of the great offensive seasons in this league. By the way, what a quick bummer. Lamar Jackson's kneel down at the end of the game. They had 100 yards rushing. He knelt down, lost a yard. It went to 99. They had 42 consecutive games of over 100 yards rushing, and that was snapped. And I'm sure they'll take it because of the kneel down victory. But what a tough way to not get your 100 yards.
I know the Ravens offense, I think, is going to have plenty of statistical primetime performances to point to this year, but still tough to lose that one there. By the way, before we close out this segment, we'll get to our NFL Acrostic preview coming up here. Certainly a moment of support and condolences for Kirk Herbstreit. His dog Ben, he announced, unfortunately had to be put down yesterday after dealing with a bout of cancer at 10 years old. A dog who everyone had kind of gotten to see and meet through his time in College Game Day this year, had been credentialed and interacting with the other mascots there. Just a beautiful 10-year-old retriever. We're obviously all huge dog people here, and to see the way so many people got to love Ben and see the way that him and Herbie bonded there on the road was fun to get to watch, and it made it hurt even more to see that. So we hope Herbie's doing all right and the Herbstreit family's hanging in there.
Yeah, I mean, listen, there are no words. You know how much we love dogs. No words. It's how sad that is.
Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. It's Friday, and you know what that means. It is acrostic time. So without further ado, here we go. G is for give me the best divisional game. O is for off the bye, in which I'm far from lame. L is for look away unless you bet on the early game. I is for I know that's Christian. 49ers fans feel sane. C is for come correct on the Sunday night main stage. Now it's time for the Golics to put us up on game. Welcome to week 10. Ooh, Gojo. Gojo's swirling around his goblet. Yeah, I like that.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know why I felt the need, but you reading poetry made me feel like grabbing my official Love is Blind gold chalice felt like a good idea. So figured I'd celebrate the occasion. But marvelous job, as always. Snaps up for producer Yates for popping it off on the acrostic here. And, Dad, it is time for us to look ahead to the rest of the NFL weekend here. So let's start with G, as Jesse mentioned here. A lot of divisional action this weekend. Starting last night, we have 4 games of teams meeting in their division. Dad, to you, which divisional matchup are you most excited to watch this weekend and why?
I'm actually most excited to watch the Broncos and the Chiefs because the Broncos defense has been playing incredibly well, and the Chiefs offense has not been what the Chiefs offense has been from a couple of years ago. Still, obviously, they're undefeated. DeAndre Hopkins was an excellent pickup for them, and they still have Travis Kelce. So I'm really interested in this Denver defense going up against the KC offense. The Denver offense, still a rookie quarterback, hit and miss. You're not sure what you're going to get, but that defense can definitely keep them in this game.
Yeah, rookie quarterback against what we know Spags does on defense scares me a little bit for Denver. But you're right, on the other side, for this Kansas City offense that now feels like it's starting to find something, especially with DeAndre Hopkins in that last game, that's the thing I'm most intrigued by. Can DeAndre Hopkins show up continually? Maybe not to that extent. We know that one scramble deep pass by Patrick Mahomes is sort of just a part of that offense that's not really there consistently every week as much as it is break glass in case of emergency. But if he can go out and continue to be the guy like that wins one-on-one for opposite Travis Kelce, then that's a really good note for that team as they move forward in the season. I don't expect Broncos to really have a chance. They're 7.5-point dogs in this one on the road at Kansas City. Will be worth noting, Dad, Kansas City already playing a lot of games in a short amount of time in Kansas City already. Sunday will be the third game played at Arrowhead in less than a week, as the Chiefs game Monday night against Tampa was in the rain, and then actually Kansas and Iowa State are playing at Arrowhead on Saturday before that. So this thing could be chewed up a little bit and make this sort of a slog. And that one, actually, Dad, it's so weird to say, in 2024 favors Kansas City in the way that they want to win, given the fact that this is no longer the dynamic, deep passing offense that we've been used to seeing. Kansas City, if you want to make this 3 yards in a cloud of dust and get your nose bloodied up front, my brother in Christ, they got a couple of guys in Creed Humphrey and Trey in the front that are going to go out there and absolutely make that happen for you.
Yeah, it's going to be fun to watch. The defense for Denver's allowing like 4.7 yards per play, second best in the NFL. So that O-line will get tested for Kansas City. This is a fun matchup, I think. And, you know, one of the other division matchups, Atlanta and New Orleans, this is one Atlanta can't let get away, right? I mean, it's a game they should win. They have 3 losses. They're the 3rd seed right now behind Washington and Detroit. So they got to keep this run going up against a New Orleans team who lost 7 in a row, fired Dennis Allen. Darren Rizzi is the interim coach right now. And you always know there's an emotional lift. Last year, Antonio Pierce got a win after being put in as the interim coach. Jeff Ulbrich did not for the Jets this year. They still lost in the first game out. And when he took over. And Atlanta should win this game without question.
Yeah, Atlanta should. We'll see. 3.5-point favorites, and the minute you have to start to count on the Falcons, it's usually a bad time. But I agree. This one and then Dallas, Philadelphia is the other one qualified to me as morbid curiosity. I just want to see what happens. Are we going to get cigars after a Raiders game again? And certainly Dallas, can they stop any of this Saquon Barkley-led rushing attack for the Eagles now with Cooper Rush in at quarterback? That's all going to be weird. Jesse, let's move on to the O, though, and get to some more, I'd say, competent and exciting football between two actually good teams.
Yeah, O, which stands for off the bye. So Commanders facing the tall task of the Steelers, who are coming off their bye. Mike Tomlin, pretty hard to beat coming out of it. So what do we think? Can the Commanders beat the bye bug? What is our take?
So, Dad, the Commies are 3-point favorites at home, getting the courtesy. But Mike Tomlin, as Jesse mentioned, 13-4 coming off a bye and has won 7 straight coming off a bye. The last loss Mike Tomlin had with an extra week to prepare was in 2016. So it's been a little while. He knows what to do here. And, Dad, now he's also doing it with a quarterback who's gotten a couple of good games under his belt in Russell Wilson. But the matchup I'm most excited to see is what TJ Watt and this now healthier Steelers defense look like against Washington's offense that's been one of the most versatile, varied rushing attacks in the sport, led by their rookie quarterback in Jaden Daniels.
Yeah, you look at Pittsburgh, you know, they only have 19 sacks on the season. You know, that they have not been, and TJ Watt, 6.5 sacks. So it's been down a little bit as far as sacks are concerned. And we've talked about this Washington offensive line, some of the parts that were added to it that we thought it would be kind of a down year, but it hasn't been. Brian Robinson running the ball is going to be obviously huge, I think, for Washington. But I'm excited. Jaden Daniels has just shown incredible poise, and I think that will continue. I agree. Russ has been playing better, giving them a semblance of a passing game. But I think the Washington defense has come along under Dan Quinn, certainly not where it needs to be. But the offense has been, for Washington, has really been, with the rookie, surprisingly really, really good. I like Washington in this game.
There's some part of me that just likes Pittsburgh now, putting it all together. And I get it. Washington has been pretty good defending deep passes, which is where Pittsburgh is starting to excel now. The game's going to be decided up front, I believe, when the Steelers are on defense. The Steelers' rush defense, third best in terms of EPA per carry allowed, while Washington is one of 4 teams that has a positive expected point average per carry on designed runs. They've been great with a really versatile running attack this year. Can Cam Hayward and that Steelers defense up front against the run stop what's been really the strength of this Commanders offense? You talked about it the other day, Dad. Not a prolific passing attack yet in terms of the volume stats, but they've had such a ground game to support them that it's made it really, really difficult. So you like Washington. I like Pittsburgh in that game. Jesse, we like the letter L. What's up next?
Yeah, L is for look away, Germany. Dear God, look away. We are sending 2 trash teams across the ocean to go play for the German fans who unfortunately are going to have to watch the Panthers and Giants go at it. So one thing that might be kind of cool, they're going to get a look at Bryce Young. He's going to be starting again. Maybe we'll see something from him. But what do you guys expect from this one?
Dad, I expect more progress for Bryce Young against a secondary for the Giants that we know has been suspect, has seen some of their former high draft picks benched. Now, they're going to have to dodge this Vikings pass rush. We talked about sexy Dexter Lawrence yesterday as a guy who should be getting more Defensive Player of the Year love. That group against the Panthers offensive line does scare me, but Bryce Young has looked like a guy, even when he's had to move around under fire the last 2 games, who's been a lot more comfortable in his own skin. So I'm looking for more progress there. And then, quite honestly, not much else. You know, Chuba Hubbard, congratulations to him, 4-year contract extension that he signed worth $33 million with a max of $37.2 and $15 million in new guaranteed money for him. Now, questionable organizational strategy as they had just drafted Jonathan Brooks in the 2nd round coming off an ACL. How they org that running back room has really been kind of interesting going back to Christian McCaffrey's waning days there. But this is one we pointed out at the beginning of the season could have implications for the number 1 overall pick. And surprise, surprise, this is a game abroad that's got implications for the number 1 overall pick.
Yeah, so my quick takes, again, congrats to Chuba Hubbard for getting paid. Bryce Young is getting a chance to kind of reinvent himself, even though he's a young player, and the first iteration didn't go well, but a chance to at least show his wares. Dexter Lawrence hopefully will continue to get the pub that he deserves, and really the best player on the field, I would say Dexter Lawrence, but Malik Neighbors, another rookie. He's tied for 3rd in the league with 55 receptions. He and Brock Bowers, 2 incredible rookie receivers. So Malik Neighbors, an absolute bright spot on a field of 2 teams that are struggling mightily.
Malik Neighbors, who has played well enough to do what he did, which is ask questions about the nature of the Giants' offense when questioned about it in the media. So interested to see how they continue to navigate a season that feels tenuous for the quarterback coach and everybody else. Jesse, let's get to I, though. This is a huge one for a team in the San Francisco 49ers that may still be contending.
Yeah, I know that's not who I think it is. Christian McCaffrey, actually it is. He's going to be back for the 49ers. Hopefully we will see him on the field. So still in play to win their division. What do you expect to see from Christian McCaffrey as he takes the field for the first time and he's going against the Bucs here? What do we think?
Yeah, Dad, based on what they've said now, he's been back ramping up for a little bit. All the reports yesterday were that he's looked great in practice. This same ramping up period is what led to him being shut down earlier in the year before he went and got all that work done on those Achilles. So I'm expecting a bunch of plays where, hey, they'll probably try and whittle it down to a lighter workload, but it seems like if you're going to have Christian McCaffrey out here and put him back, you expect him to be the dynamic version that you can use in a lot of ways that this offense is sorely missed.
Yeah, I would expect because of the seasons Jordan Mason is having for them to at least split time a little more than you normally would for the healthy Christian McCaffrey because Jordan is running the ball extremely well. But time to see what he can do, right? Time to put him in, time to make him that mismatch in the slot or a wide receiver. When he's in the game, I would expect him to be used exactly how he's been used, all over the place. As I said, a mismatch problem, a yards after the catch guy, something that they have struggled mightily in since losing Ayuk and obviously without Christian McCaffrey, so they can get some of that back. But so while I don't think he'll play every play, the plays he's in, I would expect him to be used how he normally is used.
This would be San Francisco's first back-to-back wins of the season if they were able to pull that off against a Tampa team that's still not going to have Mike Evans or Chris Godwin. Obviously, Cade Otton was the star of the show last time this team was out, and you certainly get a matchup of two great tight ends here. I think also when you look at the linebacker room for San Francisco defending Cade Otton, really the middle of that defense, going to be a fireworks show there. But, Dad, between this, Jawan Jennings also supposed to be back, who was putting up big numbers before he went down and affected this passing attack. This feels like it could be the game for San Francisco that we had on Thursday Night Football for the Rams a couple weeks ago, where all of a sudden the cavalry comes back as people are sort of writing them off. And I really think in the NFC playoff picture, I know this shouldn't be a surprise, but given the trajectory San Francisco was on, these guys coming back at this time, if they can get healthy, them and the Rams become two of the most, if not the two most dangerous teams in the NFC playoff picture.
Agreed. And a quick note, you talked about Cade Otton, the tight end. I don't know if we talk enough about George Kittle. George Kittle is 9 receptions away from passing Roger Craig for third most in 49 in history. And we know some of obviously the wide receivers who have played and receivers who have played for that team. He's about to be in third place. And he's a great blocker. Dude just does it all.
He's been an awesome Warrior to watch. Let's quickly get on to C, Dad. C is for consistency at quarterback. That's what the Texans are looking for. Lions at Texans this weekend. The Lions 3.5-point road favorites that I think get it done here, Dad. But for the Texans, this has been a strange season where they've really struggled to protect C.J. Stroud. And as a result, this offense that's also been without Nico Collins at wide receiver, we know lost Stephon Diggs for injury, has been searching for an identity that hasn't been found. Do you think they have any chance of finding it this weekend?
Well, obviously I can't pick this game because I'm calling this game, so I will not pick it. But there's definitely been a difference in stats for Stroud when Nico Collins isn't on the field. That has definitely hurt them. And you're right, the pressure he has faced. And oh, by the way, the pressure he's going to face this weekend from Houston is that they are one of the most pressure-filled teams in the league. Danielle Hunter leads the NFL with 54 pressures. Will Anderson has 40. They're in the top 6. Anderson is 6th. Danielle Hunter is 1st in pressure on the quarterback. So that's what I'm looking to see. Can they slow down this incredibly big-time explosive offense from Detroit?
Jamison Williams back from suspension this week for Detroit Lions. Nico Collins could be back this week at wide receiver. So a couple of big game breakers that, if they make their way back onto the field, could absolutely change some of the outcome of this game here. Lots of exciting action there, which could all lead to an interesting conversation we'll have next about the playoff picture and especially these grouped up wild cards here on GoJo and Golic. Cincinnati's sitting there lurking at number 9 right now. Like the AFC playoff picture, Dad, is a little bit more of what we expected where, hey, the Kansas City Chiefs and the Buffalo Bills are the 1 and 2 seed. The Houston Texans are in the mixed up there. You've got the Steelers, perennial playoff team, now leading their division, but Baltimore nipping closely at their heels at 7-3 after the win last night, followed by the Chargers and Broncos in the current expanded playoff field. And then beyond that, Dad, how far down do we get in the AFC before you start saying we've reached the floor where I don't believe these teams are capable of making a playoff push? Because for me, I think it's the Jets. I don't think I can trust the Jets enough to go and do this. Certainly behind them, the Titans and the Dolphins, I think, are too far gone.
If there is a team from the Jets down, because I still give Cincinnati a shot just because of the power of that offense. And they're 2 losses out of the 7th slot right now. So, and they're sitting at 9. The Jets know, Tennessee know. Man, if Tua stays healthy, they just lost a close game to a very, very good team. And you wonder if they can crawl up. They're 2 losses, short of the last wild card spot. From the Jets, from 10 down to 16, I would say they're all out, save for Miami. There's just something about Miami I want to hang on to for a little while longer just to see what they're going to do.
I mean, Miami's got the schedule to make that happen. A couple of games against the Jets. They get the Patriots. They get the Raiders. They get the remnants of the Cleveland Browns. So there's winnable games on their schedule, but they're firmly in the camp of they would need some help from the teams above them falling back down to earth. And while Indianapolis, I think sitting at the 8 seed is probably unrealistic given what we've seen of the erratic quarterback play there as they sort of work through the Anthony Richardson experiment. Cool moment, by the way. They showed the audio the other day. NFL tweeted out of Kevin O'Connell going up and talking to Anthony Richardson after their game and just giving him some vote of confidence and some words of advice, telling him you're a bad dude, go to work, everyone here believes in you. Dad, really easy to see why players in the Minnesota Vikings seem like they have such a strong culture around Kevin O'Connell, especially when it comes to connecting with quarterbacks. The guy seems to really have the gift.
Absolutely, and he certainly has the gift so far with Sam Darnold in restarting his career. But I really think outside of the top 7 in the AFC, the next team that I would think is the team that just lost last night, Cincinnati. 2 close losses to Baltimore, sitting at 4 and 6. But if a team like the Chargers or the Broncos with a rookie quarterback were to falter a bit, I think it would be Cincinnati would be the team that could take over.
Yeah, they're just right now with Joe Burrow in flamethrower mode, anything is possible with the Cincinnati Bengals team. With the defense and the effort they put on last night, anything is also possible with the Cincinnati Bengals team. But we mentioned kind of what Buffalo did as sort of a comp for Los Angeles and for the 49ers, but I really think the best comp would probably be Buffalo would be Cincinnati because so much of what happened in the back half of last season, certainly when Joe Brady took over on that offense, it was a recommitment to the running game, James Cook, but it was also kind of what we've seen spill over into this season, which is Josh Allen just going Super Saiyan Josh and putting the team on his back.
Biggest disappointment now, that's one thing we didn't talk about at the halfway point. Would the biggest disappointment be Jacksonville? Or what was expected out of them?
I think it's still probably the Jets, like relative to expectations that may have been unrealistic, right? Like this may have been something we should have always seen coming. But I think given the Aaron Rodgers of it all, still them being at 3 and 6 right now in the 10 spot and looking just as inept and really Aaron Rodgers looking as human and as old as we've seen of him in a while, I think that one still probably qualifies as the biggest AFC disappointment that we've seen. NFC, it's the Cowboys running away. That one seems to be the easiest one to call. Maybe you could throw the Saints in after the 2 40-point games to start the season, but that even still always seemed like it was a bit of an outlier. Do you have any disagreement with those two?
I'm not going to say I saw Dallas taking a step back. I wasn't alone. I thought they'd be right where they were.
But to this extent?
Yes. Their defense wasn't very good. They had 0 running game, and they relied on Dak and CeeDee Lamb, and you're 1 injury away. Oh, by the way, that injury happened, and they were already a bad team. Yeah, I did not think.
So who do you think was more disappointing in the NFC then?
Probably Dallas.
And so we diverge and take two different roads, wind up at the same destination. Coming up next, we'll look ahead at a massive weekend with playoff implications, because that's the stuff y'all like coming up in college football here on GoJo and Golic. All right, before we get to our full slate of college football games and give you the why, I'm going to give you the buy. I think that rhymes well enough to feel good about it. It's time for Cash It or Trash It here on GoJo or Golic. Cash It or Trash It is presented by DraftKings. Stay tuned because you'll hear more about DraftKings and all it has to offer throughout the show. DraftKings, the crown is yours. Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. Age and eligibility restrictions apply. Void where prohibited. See DraftKings.com for details. We got the big one coming up. Alabama, 2.5-point favorites on the road for Louisiana Saturday night. The over-under at 58.5 in this game. The whole world seems to be leading Bama. I get it. Jalen Milroe, a mobile quarterback. Last time on Dragon Ball Z, we saw LSU struggle with Texas A&M. Give me the Tigers and the points here. I'm riding with LSU getting a big win at home against this Alabama Crimson Tide team. All right, hour number 2 here in GoJo and Golic. Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr., and Jesse Cofield. Peter Keating going to join us from the Underdogs podcast in a little bit to talk about some underdogs for the weekend and try and see what happens. It is interesting, Dad, as we get ready to take a little bit of a college preview. I don't know if this has ever happened for you, but I always see this pop up on my timeline every once in a while. Master Test pulls this out the other day on Twitter. People warring between what they think is better between college football and the NFL, and a lot of people every once in a while, when you have a good college weekend, always tweeting out, man, I can't believe people choose the NFL over this. As if they are at all similar games. Like what we just talked about with the NFL is mastery of the craft, elite level coaching, all these wonderful chess matches of a game that's everyone at the highest level versus college football. Like what we're getting ready to watch is awesome environments like you're going to see where we'll talk about LSU bringing in a bootleg Tiger on the sideline for the game because the governor's trying to score brownie points with a constituency he doesn't really seem to understand. And watch players make great plays and like the dumbest things you've ever imagined. Like they're two completely different sports, even though people want to keep saying now that college football resembles like an NFL junior.
Yeah, college football is more emotion. It's more about the fans and the alumni coming to stick up for your team and watch your team. And the NFL is more about X's and O's and positioning for the playoffs. You know, and knowing obviously 3 losses doesn't knock you out of the playoffs like it does in college. Yeah, I think they're different games. Both great games, by the way. I mean, they're 1 and 2 as far as TV audience is concerned. So I don't know why people would have to compare them. Those that like college more than the NFL are not going to change. And those that like the NFL more than college are not going to change. Kind of sounds like our political system. They're just going to love what they love. And nothing is going to change their minds. I say just enjoy both. Don't try and sit there and say this one's better or this one's better for this reason or that reason. We don't have to. There's no vote on college football.
As my buddy Trevor Scales would say.
You can enjoy them both.
As my buddy Trevor Scales would say, por qué no los dos? Like, there is no reason. They both serve entirely different needs. And it'll be exciting to watch this weekend as we do have some of the best atmospheres in the sport, big rivalry games. So let's get to our college football preview. It is brought to you by Cheez-It because this college football season, we're feeling the cheesiest with Cheez-It. And we got some big cheesy games this weekend, Dad. I mentioned it in the Cash It or Trash It segment before, but Alabama on the road at LSU. Number 11 Alabama, number 15 LSU, playing what feels like the first real elimination game of the college football season when it comes to the playoff contenders. And real interesting spot both of these teams are in. Obviously, the last time we saw LSU, they had a Jekyll and Hyde game against Texas A&M where they had shut down defensively the Texas A&M offense as it was led by Connor Wegman in the first half. But then in the second half, we talked to Brian Kelly yesterday. Marcel Reed went off, and it looked like LSU had never seen a team run the quarterback before. So do you think they're going to be able to remedy that against Jalen Milroe, who can certainly hurt you with his legs for the Alabama offense?
Well, I think they're expecting a running quarterback now or to be part of the offense. So I would imagine they would be more prepared for this, where they were kind of caught off guard with the difference in quarterbacks at Texas A&M, and obviously it hurt them. So I would expect them to be more prepared for this without question. A moment, too, on true freshman Ryan Williams. I mean, 35 catches, 700 yards, 7 touchdowns. Dude, again, we have to remember he's a true freshman, and what he is accomplishing is just amazing when you see guys this young producing so well. But I tell you what, I might be leaning at LSU in this game. I just think they'll be ready for the running quarterback. There's just something about playing at LSU. I think that certainly helps. That atmosphere is incredible. And I think Nussmeier, now he doesn't have 9 interceptions. He has turned the ball over. And we'll get to another quarterback, Carson Beck, who has turned the ball over. Got to stay away from that. Got to stay away from the turnovers. If he can do that, I think LSU wins this game.
Yeah, that's obviously going to be the key. I'm with you on that one. Alabama's defense is, again, also waxed and waned for a lot of this year, but I'm with you. I think LSU wins this game outright, Dad. You look, Alabama offensively and Jalen Milroe, while he's 12th in QBR in college football, this team has struggled mightily in third and long situations. Jalen Milroe has been pressured at 40.3% of his dropbacks. That's 112th out of 130 eligible quarterbacks in college football. And don't look now, like we all kind of wrote LSU's defense off early in the season after the USC stuff. They've gotten better and better week after week. Braden Swinson's top 10 in sacks in college football. We know even after Harold Perkins doesn't live there anymore, that defensive front has gone about their business. I think the Texas A&M game was an outlier. I think they're going to be able to get after Jalen Milroe in this offense and get a big win.
And I tell you what, they have an outside chance at the SEC championship game. There are 5 teams with 1 loss, and the other 4 play each other. Texas plays Texas A&M at the end of the season, and Tennessee plays Georgia in a couple of weeks, I think. So 2 of those teams are going to have 2 losses. And so they'll still be on the outside looking in, but with a little help, they could possibly get there. But make no mistake, the loser of this game is out. They are out of the college football playoffs.
Dad, you played at LSU during a time when they used to have the live tiger on the sideline in games. What was that like?
Well, it was awe-inspiring. It wasn't as scary as the buffalo that ran at me when we played Colorado, because that was a buffalo and we were out for the coin toss, and the buffalo came on the field, and there were 6 people holding the buffalo, and the buffalo could have shook them off at any time and just run us down. So that was the scariest thing I've ever seen. Mike the Tiger was in a cage, obviously, but still just an incredible animal. And that was an afternoon game we played them, and it was hot as hell. Our center, my roommate Mike Kelly, had to actually change his pants on the sideline because between the sweat and the water he was drinking to try and stay hydrated, which was leaking out of his mouth at times, every time he would snap the ball to the quarterback who had his hands under there would be a splash of sweat and water. So they actually held towels up on the sideline, and he changed his pants on the sideline. Because, we played that game in the afternoon, and it was hot as hell. But we won.
I've made a piss circle around a guy before where we all kind of back up around a guy so he can drop down and pee on the sideline. I've never helped create a full-blown changing room like you saw there. That is the Louisiana Heat difference at work there. And, again, it's worth pointing out, nobody at LSU seems connected to this tiger at all. This is not Mike, their actual tiger mascot that lives on campus in his sanctuary there. This is the governor kind of trying to force this on everyone and something he thinks is cool. Brian Kelly wouldn't really touch this comment-wise. Nobody involved seems to think this is a good idea except the governor based on the friends I've talked to around LSU. So good luck with all that one. Politics, again, go sports. Jesse, Dad mentioned that LSU might need some help getting to the SEC championship. Let's talk about a matchup that might actually give them that.
Yeah, so Georgia coming into Ole Miss to face the running Rebels. Now, one team can afford another loss, we think, okay, Georgia, but it's time to put up or shut up if Ole Miss wants to eke into the playoffs. So how do you feel about this one? How do you see it shaking out?
This one's really interesting, Dad. Georgia, you want to talk about the turnover problem Garrett Nussmeier's had. Carson Beck has been really struggling on that front. Multiple games with 3 interceptions that he's coming off there for a Georgia offense that seems at risk of sort of like we talked about in the NFL with some defenses undermining a defense that looked, especially against Texas, like it still got that championship pedigree. So Jackson Dart and this Ole Miss team have lost a couple of close ones that have put them with 0 margin for error. Do you think they can get it done at home against this Georgia team?
Well, I mean, listen, if Carson Beck doesn't throw interceptions, the offense certainly is a good offense in Georgia, no doubt about it. But that's going to be the key to this game. I mean, 3 consecutive games with more than 1 interception. I mean, that's been awful for them. Jackson Dart, by the way, leads the nation in passing yards, leads the nation in quarterback rating, and is tied for 3rd, which touchdown passes at 21, and he only has 3 interceptions, so he's not turning the ball over. So if this turns into a score fest, that means Carson Beck will have to throw the ball more, which means Carson Beck may turn the ball over more. But this Georgia defense, I mean, it's a good. Now they didn't show it obviously against Alabama all that well, especially in the first half. But we know they can step up when they have to. And this is absolutely an elimination game for Ole Miss if they were to get their third loss as well.
Georgia, road favorites of 2.5 points. I think they win and cover that. But, Dad, you mentioned it's going to have to be recommitting to the run game if you are Georgia, because you mentioned the struggles that Carson Beck's had turning the ball over back-to-back games with 3 picks. This is also not an Ole Miss defense or pass rush that you want to be behind the sticks against. Number 1 in college football with 42 sacks on the season, and you look at some of the players that they brought over this offseason. Walter Nolan, if you haven't had a chance, like if you're an NFL draft person, if you're someone that vacations on Saturdays just to see who's going to make it to Sundays, watch Walter Nolan out there for Ole Miss in the middle of that defensive line. Princely Umami-Allen's also great at defensive end there, but Walter Nolan's going to be like a top 15 pick at defensive tackle. The guy is borderline unblockable, and that's what they've got to avoid, Dad. Long down and distance situations against an Ole Miss defense that has become the strength of this team that they've rebuilt it after this offseason. Offensively, Trey Harris and Jordan Watkins at wide receiver have both been banged up and are doubtful for this game. Their running back, Parrish, is out already. So Ole Miss, I think, Dad, because of the lack of weapons here, unfortunately, not going to be able to get it done on offense. Against the defense you mentioned in Georgia, perfectly structured. I always say this, for pace and space teams like Ole Miss, like Tennessee, Georgia is the last defense on earth you want to see, because they can win in the box with 5 or 6 guys, and they can throw a bunch of guys in the back end to defend against the passing attack that you want to get it done. So Georgia is the antidote for what these teams have built offensively in the SEC.
Yeah, I would agree. I'll take Georgia in this game as well, and continue their high ranking and set up their next big game against Tennessee.
Yes, exactly. Another pace and space team that wants to go at super warp speed. But, Jesse, we spent enough time in the SEC here. Let's go to the Big 12, wonky conference, and certainly the one that with BYU at the top had the biggest gripe in many people's minds in the first CFP rankings.
Yeah, BYU sitting there undefeated. They're facing Utah in the Holy War. BYU 3.5-point favorites. Do you think that they stay perfect this weekend?
I do, Dad. I think for Utah, this is a tough spot right now. So we already know Cam Rising was banged up a bunch to start the season, now out indefinitely. Andy Ludwig, their offensive coordinator, has already stepped down. Mike Bajakian, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, I apologize, has taken over for him instead. And true freshman quarterback Isaac Wilson has been banged up, got pulled at the end of the Houston loss there. Now you've got Brandon Rose that might get the start in this game instead at quarterback. So the offense has been a mighty struggle. The defense still looks really good, but I just think too much of a complete BYU team for them.
You know, we all talked about BYU kind of getting shafted by the committee a little bit. Think how they feel. And there's no way they screw this up right now. They're so much better than Utah. They're averaging 37 points a game, but in the Big 12, they're averaging 34 points a game against the 5 Big 12 opponents they played. So they're scoring against the Power 4 conference team. Their defense leads the conference with 18 takeaways and 14 interceptions. So it's a high-scoring offense. It's an opportunistic defense. It should be a ticked-off team that they got ranked where they got ranked. I don't think there is any way. Now, again, there is a way, but I would be stunned if this is where BYU slipped up. I'm not saying they won't slip up somewhere, but coming off the first rankings, playing a 4-4 Utah team, 1-4 in the conference, I don't think this is the week that they slip up.
I don't either. Offensively, if you haven't put eyes on him yet, Jake Retzlaff, the quarterback for BYU, who has one of the more interesting nicknames in college football, has been awesome this year. I think quietly I don't know how it's quiet because they're a top 10 team, but feels like one of the more underrated players in the sport in terms of a guy who, I don't know about his NFL future. I haven't looked into it enough through that lens, but very good college quarterback who distributes the ball well in an offense that I think is called really well for them. And then really, Dad, the only path to victory for Utah is the element of surprise at quarterback. Can you get BYU uncomfortable by having to prepare for 2 quarterbacks all year? Brandon Rose isn't a guy that's seen the field much, third-year sophomore who's been with that program but hasn't played a lot until last week. And then the home crowd here. This is a rivalry game. It's one of the cool ones where both teams wear their home kits. They're going to wear the red and wear the blue like you see with USC and UCLA. But you and I both think BYU gets it done here. They keep it moving, and they keep holding up the banner for a Big 12 that right now fighting for their lives in the college football playoff picture. Coming up next, we'll talk about some other underdogs, both college and pro, that are fighting for their lives right now. Peter Keating going to join us next here on GoJo Golic. All right, welcome back to GoJo and Golic. Always fun to check in with Peter Keating. You can check out the Underdogs podcast, him and Jordan Brenner, who you've seen and heard around here. Doing a great job as always. Peter, what's going on, man? Been a little while. How you doing?
Hey, how's it going? It's good to see you. You having a good time here mid-season?
Far, so good as we try and sort through sort of the wreckage of the midseason, both college and pro. We know we've got the college football playoff rankings that just came out. We're at the pseudo halfway mark in the NFL. And so we need your help sorting through some things here today. I know you and Peter on the show have debuted a new segment called Scrappy or Crappy, if I have that right, where you're trying to kind of figure out which first half performances are real and a mirage.
Yeah, during the first half of the season, you kind of compared teams to how you expected them to do at the beginning of the season, right? Well, now they have a body of work. And what's interesting is, like in the NFL right now, there's 9 teams that have 2 wins. None have 0, none have 1. So there's like this giant last place tie, right? And, some of those teams are like cool underdogs, value plays, right? Because they're better than they look. They're scrappy. Some of them just suck. This is the time of year where we just start saying, this isn't an underdog team. This is just a bad team,
So who would be the leaders of your bad team brigade then?
Well, look, there's no way to, I looked up mock drafts for 2025 and I saw for Carolina, there was one place that said needs quarterback, wide receiver, edge, and linebackers. I was like, do they need peanut vendors too? Carolina needs talent all over the field. They've been outscored by 146 points. There's some teams in the league that haven't scored 146 points. I think Carolina playing the Giants, the Giants, we all saw, Spider-Man coming to New York. They strengthened the defensive line. They maybe have the defensive player of the year. Amazingly enough, all that has done is exposed how bad the rest of their defense is, and they have a quarterback who everybody in the stadium knows is not coming back. So the Giants and Carolina, I hate to extend this metaphor, but if we're talking crap, they are meeting this weekend in the toilet bowl. So I think they're pretty good. And I would also throw in the Raiders. I had this sad feeling that the Raiders' fate was sealed at the draft. This team wanted a quarterback. They were drafting 13th. 6 quarterbacks got taken in the top 12, including their man, Michael Penix, who was, shockingly taken by Atlanta. And so they have the best tight end in the league. Fantastic. Unfortunately, they still have no quarterback and they've given up 251 points. And we just don't see where things are getting better. I think those would be the 3 where, you can make cases for the talent on one side of the ball in places like Jacksonville, which has a lot of good skilled players. They just don't have an offensive line, or Cleveland, where the defense might still come together. They've just had a lot of injuries, but I think the Carolina Giants Raiders combo is like even in New England, you can see where they're building towards something, right? But those 3 teams are pretty disappointing in every facet of the game.
Yeah, we have sent Germany our best with the Giants in Carolina this week for them to watch. Scrappy and crappy, but also disappointing how a few of the teams have the quarterback that they're going to go with. Jacksonville does, New England does, has their quarterback that they're going to use. So would that make Jacksonville, because he's a veteran in Trevor Lawrence, the most disappointing of the 2-win teams?
Yeah, I think so, because I think a lot of us had him slotted in to do much better, and there were reasons for that. The advanced metrics try to measure how difficult quarterback throws are sometimes. Like usually the longer you throw on average, the worse you'll do with your completion percentage. It's just tougher to throw really long. But Trevor Lawrence at his best throws deep and hard, and he can make incredibly difficult throws that are really long. He's great. But unfortunately, while they have come up with some good players, Brian Thomas, I was looking on Pro Football Focus the other day. Jacksonville's top-rated tackle is 52nd in the league. They just have no O-line. They made the classic mistake of filling in skill players before they filled in their O-line. And Brendan Scherf, who was a really good player at his peak, is really kind of not anymore. And so Lawrence just doesn't have the time to make the kind of throws he's capable of making. I know a lot of people are blaming him for having a down and inconsistent season. This is a team that needs 3 or 4 new offensive linemen. And when that's a constant problem, talk about the Giants, was a problem for years with them. And for some, when you just see a team where the quarterback can't really show his value, that's a good blueprint for a really disappointing team.
Yeah, I think Joe Burrow screwed up a lot of people's expectations for how that pre-draft meme of draft Jamar Chase or Penei Sewell can play out with a quarterback who can absorb that many hits constantly. And we're starting to now see the physical regression of that for Trevor Lawrence, who looks like he's going to be out this weekend, and some of the difficulties that's going to present for Jacksonville. So that team certainly feels like they're in the scrap heap right now. In terms of the scrappy side of things, you mentioned still looking for underdog plays. Who are the teams that so far have underperformed, but you think whether it's because of injury or some changes there might be able to go out here and make noise this back half of the season?
Well, for both Jordan and me, we both like Miami in that group. Look, Miami's offense has looked terrible without Tua. It's looked pretty good with Tua. So assuming Tua can stay upright, which is a very risky bet. And one thing Miami has to do is they have backup quarterbacks like Tyler Huntley, who are not of similar efficiency to Tua, right? There's nobody who can step in to be a 1A or a platoon quarterback in that situation who fits the offense that they have like Tua. They need to do a better job supplementing the backup quarterback, the quarterback position. But having said that, Miami has looked terrible for a whole bunch of reasons that are horrible to watch, but don't usually sustain over a long period of time. They've had a lot of fumbles. Their pressure rate is not translating into sacks. I mean, they are 30th in the league in sacks, but they're nowhere near that in pressure rate. That doesn't usually, that's an unstable combination. I mean, other teams have kicked record long field goals against them to win games. That is a horrible way to lose. But you're not going to keep losing games on 62-yard or 61-yard field goals. So there's reasons to think they were going to kind of bounce back a little anyway, just because their luck in those weird categories has been terrible. And plus, they were the worst offense in football without Tua, but Tua's back. So I think we both would think they could make some noise of all of these misbegotten squads. They're the best shot to pull off some crazy wins in the second half.
So you think Miami, the only 2-win team with the possibility of making the playoffs?
Well, playoffs are a long way away for all these guys, but I'll mention one team. Jordan, our co-host Jordan Brenner does not agree with this, but I noticed that the Saints point differential is only -22. They've only been outscored by 22 points, which is almost nothing for a 2-7 team. They had 2 blowout wins when they were healthy at the beginning of the year. They lost by 1 point to Carolina. So in some ways, their luck has been terrible. At the beginning of the year, I liked that they kept the guys they really needed of their free agents, and they made good signings. So I had some hope. And Derek Carr is better than people realize, I think, also. And he was hurt, but now he's back. So and in that division is not terrific. So there's a bunch of reasons why I could make a case for them. I just don't know if anyone else agrees with me.
You know what? It's one of those things in the NFC South. I feel like you're kind of allowed to have any take you want, and it'd be pretty accessible because, again, when we're asking the Atlanta Falcons to be something stable we can rely on, we're usually making a mistake. So I don't think you're too far off there, but we can continue to explore that as the season goes along here. Peter, I do want to shift gears while we've got you here, too, because we also had the first round of the CFP rankings come out in college football. We just did our weekend preview here, and I think now the interesting lens to look at this is we've got a top 12, we've got an expanded field for the playoffs, and much like we used to try and measure with the 4-team playoff where we had teams go from way outside the initial top 4, work their way in. As you look at the initial rankings now of the teams from 13 on down, who are some of the teams you think have the best opportunity to try and crash the party here down the last quarter of the season?
Well, this is kind of exciting because I think the top 12 that they have makes sense, but there's a team, Mississippi's at 16, okay? And analytics love Ole Miss. This is a team that if you go through the math and just try to adjust teams' margin of victory by their schedule strength, which is kind of the basic way that analytics look at all college football teams, because not everybody plays everybody, right? So you can't go head to head, but you can look at how well teams have outscored guys and then figure out how hard their opposition has been. When you do that, Ole Miss shoots up to looking like a top 10 team in the country. And I'll just give you two much more basic things, which are really interesting. Jackson Dart now leads the country in completion percentage, but also in yards per completion. That's hard to do. He's throwing deep, right? He has 3,210 yards, but he's completing almost 72% of his passes. And they've been playing much harder opposition recently. That's really impressive. At the same time, on the other side of the ball, they're second in the entire country with 11.7% sack percentage. They get after the opposition and they throw deep and throw well. And they lost to Kentucky by 3. They lost to LSU by 3. Meanwhile, they just crushed Arkansas, scoring 63 points. So I think they would be a scary team for anyone in that top 12 to play. And we're going to see this weekend. I mean, the rubber's going to meet the road. They're home against Georgia, and that is a huge game. I think the systems we like the best don't see that much difference at all in terms of overall strength between Georgia and Ole Miss, and Ole Miss is going to be at home.
To your point on that one, Bill Connolly's SP Plus over at ESPN has Ole Miss 4th behind Georgia at 3 right now. Ole Miss SP Plus, which is more predictive than it is representative necessarily of the team there, but has the Ole Miss offense 5th and the Ole Miss defense 7th, Dad. So team statistically on paper, to Peter's point, very close in a lot of people's mind.
How about, did you give SMU a chance in their conference championship game? That would be the way that they would get in against a Miami team. And then you look at Iowa State or possibly Colorado. I mean, as I've said, we talked so much about Colorado last year when they were bad, and we're barely talking about them this year when they're good.
Yeah, I think I'm guilty. I wrote off Colorado after that horrible loss to Nebraska, because we liked Nebraska in the preseason, and Nebraska played their perfect game defensively against Colorado after several people on Colorado shot their mouths off. So it was easy to overrate Colorado before and very easy to underrate them since. They have, if you talk about forward-looking analytics, the analytics predictions of how Colorado would do over the past 6 weeks, Colorado's blown by them. I mean, they have overachieved this past 6 weeks now. And I think, it's a hard road ahead to win the Big 12, but they're another team that who wants to face them right now, right? So yes. Also SMU, sure. SMU's 13th, right? And a 12-team field. So they actually have the best chance, I think, of any team other than the top 12 of getting into the top 12. And, their only loss, right, is to BYU. They destroyed Pitt, another favorite of underdogs. We were all in the Pitt bet, we were all Nebraska for a while, then we were in Indiana, and we guess we still are. We all were for Pitt. And then SMU came along and blew them out. So they have actually improved their chances. Look at playoff predictor at ESPN or some of these other systems a lot since October 1st. So the question is of the teams that are going to kind of cannibalize each other in the biggest conferences, who's going to end up knocked out because they got 3 losses and just can't overcome that, right? So it is true for a team like SMU, and it's probably maybe true for a team like Ole Miss, that they can't afford another bad game anywhere along the way, right? The problem with the forward-looking analytics that love teams like Ole Miss and to a lesser extent SMU is if you have a bad loss or two, that still counts. People still see that, right? If you shouldn't have lost those games, the analytics say you shouldn't have lost them. It doesn't matter because you still did, right? So if you end up like South Carolina is a good example. South Carolina could beat a lot of teams right now, but they're probably going to end up with 4 losses, and there's just no way, probably.
Right.
Yep, I always call those landmine teams. They're just good enough to ruin somebody else's season after they've already ruined their own. Check out Underdogs, Jordan Brenner, Peter Keating, both doing a great job as always. Peter, we'll talk to you again soon, all right, brother?
Thank you so much. Have a great one.
Thank you.
Awesome stuff there. Coming up next, let's get some good old-fashioned shade. Coaches throwing plenty of it out this past week at the mic. Next on GoJo and Golic.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. Jesse Cofield, Mike Golic Jr. and Mike Golic Sr. here. And if there's one thing we love on this show, it's yapping. And you know what? Coaches love yapping too. So we have some sound bites, from around the world of sports before the weekend. And first up, somebody who has a bit of an axe to grind with the Giants.
I'm here. I love the players that we have. I think that it's obviously a different game, but it's a lot better than being in some places that are 2-7.
Okay, so he spent 2 seasons with the Giants, obviously, as defensive coordinator, and there he is taking a little shot. What'd you guys think of him just pulling that out of nowhere?
I mean, it doesn't seem like that's out of much of nowhere, Dad. We remember him and Brian Daboll did not seem to get along well at the end of their tenure, and that was one to me that seemed like a little bit too much similarity, both very fiery competitors and guys that wanted to win and weren't, which is always going to create some friction there. But Wink's the kind of defensive coordinator where it seems like his attitude perfectly matches his play calling style. Where last year when we had, everything with Jim Harbaugh and Jesse Minter was about, this scheme and how they do all these different. Wink Martindale's just going to try and kill you with hammers. And it hasn't gone the best for Michigan over the course of this season, but clearly the grass is greener for him in the Midwest than it was in the Northeast.
Yeah, I mean, listen, it obviously, and I don't know if we'll ever find out the real story of what happened, but remember, he just left. He just cleaned out his office and left. I mean, nothing. I mean, so it was bad in New York. Him and Daboll just absolutely did not get along. And, coaches, the coaching fraternity and coaching circle, you hit and you miss, you get reunited with people, then you go away from people. But one thing they have is long memories. They have long memories of places they have been and people who they have been with. And Wink has been doing this a long time. So there was obviously some big time friction in New York.
I just do think it is weird because you mentioned all the things the coaches have. They also usually have a code of silence among the fraternity where because it is such a tight-knit group and because so many people understand eventually you might be working with one of these guys, you usually don't see this. And so it is interesting for Wink, who obviously is tenured enough where he probably didn't care about any of that stuff, quite honestly. No. But to speak this clearly and candidly about that squad. Wink got a hell of a one coming up this weekend, by the way. Him and Michigan getting ready for Curtis Rourke and that Indiana offense. It's been amazing, Dad. Michigan still has dudes. Like, he's coaching NFL caliber players in Kenneth Grant and Mason Graham and certainly Will Johnson. It just, especially opposite of Michigan offense that's been so inept this season, has really struggled itself now.
Plus, he's a guy, let's be honest, he's going to want to get back into the NFL, right? He's going to want to coach in the NFL. The college stop will be I don't know how long of a stop for him, but he's been in this long enough to have a circle of friends in coaching to where I think he'll end up back in the NFL.
I would be curious to hear from him because I heard someone ask Pat Shurmur about this, who's the offensive coordinator for Colorado, about the differences, really on the field in coaching between Saturdays and Sundays. And Pat Shurmur's answer for that was pretty interesting in talking about just how different and tailored your NFL game plans are on first and second down versus on third down, how much the field morphs in the red zone, where in college you really do just run a lot more of your stuff overall. And part of that's always, hey, you got 18 to 22-year-olds you're trying to onboard in a hurry to do stuff that most of them didn't have to do at that level in high school. So it's a little bit more cookie cutter and paint by numbers in a lot of cases than it is in the NFL where this is your job.
It's way more of a chess match in the NFL, way more of a chess match. The talent level, just from like Pee Wee football to the NFL, it's wide, then it gets close. By the time you make it to the NFL, every player is capable of making plays. So now it gets to, in the coach's mind, of being positioning of where you're going to position your players and where you can put the other side of the ball on their heels as opposed to you being on their heels. That to me was one of the biggest differences outside of just unbelievable athletic ability from college to the NFL and how much it grew was the chess match between offense and defense.
Yeah, NFL coaches especially are trying to find the one or two bad players relative to the unbelievable players on the field that they can get over on in a game. It's why, like, early in the season when Bill O'Brien was carving up that Florida State defense and you saw them spamming one or two of the same plays, it's because matchup-based coach found what he liked and was going to make you pay for it over and over. So always fascinating there. Wink Martindale was just one of the coaches, though, Jesse, popping off here. Doug Pederson, not to be left out at the NFL level, decided shade was also on the menu for him in Jacksonville.
Yeah, so ahead of their matchup with the Vikings this weekend, he had some ideas about why Sam Darnold is playing so well this year.
It clicked finally this season. First time in his career, first round pick. Why? Why is this the time for him?
Justin Jefferson?
What are you looking at me?
Because you're thinking it. I think the talent around him, that helps, right? Just having the run game, the defense, the way the defense is played.
For a team that's sitting at 2-7, I don't know if I'd be making jabs like that.
Yeah, Dad, this one's interesting to me because he's not wrong. This is what we all said about it, but to hear it from a sitting head coach and the guy who's getting ready to play him is also a very different bit of calculus on how you go about that.
I think he meant it as more lauding Justin Jefferson than ripping Sam Darnold, but you're gonna take it the way of, yeah, he's got a lot more talent around him than he had with the Jets. He was a backup in San Francisco, so he never really got to do anything. But he has a lot more talent around him than the Jets. And quite honestly, let's also be honest, a better play caller in Kevin O'Connell, who handles quarterbacks better than he was handled with the Jets. So I don't really take it as a slight. I could see how some people would, if you're in the Sam Darnold bandwagon, to say, wait a minute, instead of mentioning what Sam's doing well, you mentioned what the player around him is doing well. But I again, what he said was true, but do coaches normally not just basically praise everybody?
Right. I think stating the obvious in the same way the media might is something that they usually leave to the media. Most coaches just do the thing where they're effusive with praise, where they talk about how great this player is. The old Bill Belichick line where he loved loving up other teams' players. And so you do invite bulletin board material in a game where if you're Jacksonville, you're getting ready to start Mac Jones and are probably going to defensively get carved up by Sam Darnold. So this is one of those that's just not going to age well for a guy in Doug Pederson, who I don't think had real malice, but probably at this point just doesn't give lots of bleeps this season.
Yeah, I don't think, I would agree with that. He's on the hot seat with Trevor being out, non-throwing shoulder injury. They pick up C.J. Beathard from the Miami practice squad to be the backup now. He was the backup to Trevor Lawrence for 3 years. So, yeah, Doug's got his own issues to worry about in Jacksonville, to worry about what Minnesota fans might think about if he slighted Sam Darnold or not. I don't think Doug puts too much care into that.
No, I don't think he does, but rest assured, this is the kind of stuff that's just catnip for a Vikings locker room that, again, we talked about it, that Kevin O'Connell moment with Anthony Richardson, just one of many that show you. The NFC North, you've got two of the better culture teams in the NFL, it seems, in the Detroit Lions and the Minnesota Vikings in terms of coaches that understand the right buttons to push with their players. And so when you see something like this from the outside, it does sort of resonate in a very different way. So, hey, listen, we appreciate the honesty at the microphone. And again, it's kind of like how Sean Payton got in a little bit of trouble. Sometimes when you talk like you're an analyst getting ready to go and break it down on TV, it doesn't necessarily hit the same way when all of a sudden you're back wearing the visor. Doug Pederson has been around this a long enough time, played, obviously coached at a high level and been a part of a lot of great winning football, and probably going to have a bad time this year, a weekend against Minnesota. So plenty more ahead as we look on that. Coming up next, though, let's finish this off with this, that, and the third. We've already talked about some of what we're going to hear coming up here with LSU and their weird tiger, a very expensive pair of slippers getting ready to head onto the market. But the one I am by far most excited to talk about coming up next year. Monkeys on the loose in South Carolina. Apparently Planet of the Apes might actually be more of a documentary than a fictional film. We'll get to that next year on GoJo and Golic. All right, let's finish the week off with this, that, and the third. 3 quick stories to send you into the weekend. Make sure you download, subscribe, rate, and review the show. Leave us a 5-star rating, and check us out here live Monday through Friday from 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern on the DraftKings Network, which now includes our new home on the GoJo and Golic YouTube channel. Make sure you go and smash subscribe, hit the little bell so you get the alerts when we're starting live here in the morning, and check it out. All of our content now going to be posted there. We'll have plenty of great videos. I'm sure that'll pop up as we march down the end of this football season. That'll live just on the YouTube channel as well. So not going to want to miss any of that. So again, the new home for all things visual, GoJo and Golic on the YouTube channel. Make sure you check that out. And, yeah, we're looking forward to it. Another place where we can try and get in front of you guys, in addition to Samsung TV Plus, Roku, all the social media pages. We're going to be where you're at, and the YouTube page is now one of them. Dad, you're shaking your head there. I know, I understand this is a brave, scary new world. We're going to get you through it.
I'm just happy to be in a room with a microphone and a camera and not have to worry about all the different places this gets distributed to. So I don't have to do anything different, right? I can just do what I'm doing. I don't mean to be the old man of the group, but I'm the old man of the group. And I just don't
I was going to say, you don't have to mean to be it. You are. And that's okay. Yeah. We acknowledge that, and that's why we're not going to ask you to do any of the scary stuff here. Eventually, you're going to have to do a get ready with me video, though, or something thoughty like that. The Instagram and the TikTok algorithms need to get fed, and unfortunately, you're going to have to do it because the internet's decided that you're an attractive older man, and we've got to try and weaponize that. I don't know when the GoJo and Golic OnlyFans account kicks off, but we've kicked around Tub Daddy already, and I'm not willing to totally write that off the board. If I'm going to already have to go to therapy, we might as well at least get rich off of it.
I'm into Tub Daddy. You know me, I love the bass. Get the sudsy soap bubbles in there and covering all the right spots, or maybe not.
Oh, Oh, you got to
know.
subscribe to the OnlyFans to find out more.
You know what I'm,
Exactly.
you know what I'm talking about, Jesse. You
I know what you're
about.
talking about, Senior. I'm with you. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't like the voice anyone's doing right now, so I'm going to quickly pivot and say subscribe to the YouTube channel. There will not be weird, softcore, pornographic dad bathtub content on there
Maybe
yet.
not. Okay.
Yet.
I wonder if
in
there
the
should
meantime,
be pictures of me getting into the bathtub seductively and getting out of the bathtub seductively, or just in the bathtub. These are questions that
Seductively.
need to be fair answered.
Yeah. Yeah. The people need this.
I don't know who the people are, but I hope they find God at some point. Just like in this, I hope they find those monkeys in South Carolina. Authorities in South Carolina on Thursday warned residents to lock their doors and windows after more than 40 monkeys escaped from a research facility as of early Friday. No indication that the fugitive monkeys have been captured. They broke loose from the Alpha Genesis facility in Beaufort County, and traps have now been set here. I got to say, rooting for the monkeys and their freedom on this one here. We can have a lot of differing opinions on animal research, but in general, I am pro animals being able to go and live freely outside. I don't know how great of a time they're going to have in South Carolina, but, go with God, monkeys. I'm rooting for you on this one. I hope they don't find you.
Yeah, there were 50 that were caged, and 43 took off. They're very young females weighing approximately 6 to 7 pounds. But I don't know, man. Monkeys just kind of scare me. Mike, me and your mother were with Alexis and Mike Periano. I forgot where we were, but we were out in like a rainforest, doing a kind of a walkthrough. And the monkeys, and the guide said, don't smile at the monkeys. Don't show your teeth to the monkeys. Like when you smile, you show your teeth. They were saying, don't do that. I'm like, okay, but that kind of scares me. You kind of look and see a monkey, you're like, oh, you smile, oh, good monkey. I'm smiling. Oh God, what's going to happen? I mean, so I'm just not down with monkeys. Listen, I hope they have a good time while they're out. No, I hope nobody gets hurt. Not the monkeys or any humans. I hope everybody returns and they're okay. But yeah, monkeys just aren't doing it for me.
Yeah, I totally get it. There's that chimp that ripped someone's face off. Like, if there was a chimp coming around, I wouldn't be cool with it. These are 6 to 7 pounds. Don't think they can really do much damage. They're about the size of like a guinea pig, so I'm not too worried about them. I will say animal testing, absolutely horrifying, and if you can, support companies that don't do that. But it does look like this is medical research, and they do some clinical trials for like progressive brain disorders. So I'm not sure where we draw the line here. Like, if we can cure Alzheimer's doing this, maybe it's something worth doing, but it still sucks. You hate to see testing on animals. It makes me sick. So if it's something for like cosmetics or something, don't support those companies.
I would agree with you. And also about they're only 6 to 7 pounds, but what if all 43 decide to get on the action, okay? Now that's a little more. That's a little rougher.
That could be bad. Yeah.
This is the duck-sized horses or horse-sized duck debate playing out in real time. We can get to that another day, but we've got more PETA-related issues here, Jesse. What do we got next?
Yeah, so we talked about this earlier, but LSU is having a live tiger brought to their game because, like you said, the governor thinks this is a good idea, and PETA is not happy. They're coming out and saying, this practice, they stopped doing this, like LSU stopped doing this back in 2017, I believe it was, and so now they're bringing in a different tiger from a sanctuary. PETA's freaking out, being like, you can't do this. And I gotta agree. You think that's not gonna be incredibly stressful for the tiger to be in a cage on the sidelines with like all these people? Like, why do we have to keep subjecting animals to this stuff?
Because politicians don't understand their constituents very often here. And Jeff Landry, the governor of Louisiana, thought this would be cool, thought it would be a dub. And again, my friends who are LSU fans that I have talked to have basically said, nobody really wants this. And especially, I'd imagine, for LSU, this is a particularly precarious situation. You are the state university. You've done away with this practice on your own. Mike the Tiger, their actual mascot, is not going to be involved in this. Like, all of this seems like a tremendous liability in a lot of ways that they're kind of being forced into. So, going to be fascinated how this goes. And again, the other side of it is if you're a player in the stadium on those teams, you now have the worry of a live tiger being there in the stadium.
Yeah, Jesse, I'm with you. Oh, we've talked about this. Just not a fan of any caged animals, and just, I'm glad they stopped the practice with Mike the Tiger taking him to the games, because you don't know how they're going to react to, tens of thousands of people that are there and how loud it gets. I mean, to me, is it really worth it? So the governor, again, now trying to make a show. I'm just not for it. Just absolutely not for it.
No, Dad, to your point, most of the mascots that you see in these environments, they've grown up. They've been, trained
Right.
and been around a lot of these
Yes.
environments here. If you're not an animal that's been ready for that, it's got to be scary as hell. So I hope that tiger, whoever it is, has as good a time as he possibly can and then gets the hell out of there and can go back to living its tiger life. Jesse, let's get to a happier story here for the third and talk about the Wizard of Oz.
Yeah, the Wizard of Oz. So Judy Garland wore those infamous ruby slippers throughout the movie, and a pair of them are going to be back on the auction block almost 2 decades after they were stolen. So a thief stole these, convinced they were made with real rubies. So obviously they're called the ruby slippers because of the color, not made with real jewels. Anyway, the FBI found them, and now they are going to be back on the auction block here. So if you want to own a piece of history, you could, try and buy these. I don't know. Anybody that big of a Wizard of Oz fan?
Yeah, I definitely am. Yeah, and they were donated to the Judy Garland Museum in Grand Rapids, Minnesota in 2005. And a 76-year-old man stole them, smashed the case with a hammer, and stole the shoes, thinking that, as he put it, he was going to pull off one last score, thinking that it was real rubies on the slippers.
One last score. Okay, man.
The museum is trying to get together funds for like $100,000, because that's what they think, and try and buy the slippers back to put them back in the museum. So we'll see how it goes.
Sounds like Happy Gilmore trying to save his grandma's house. We'll be interested to see how that works out. I'm just excited. We got Wicked coming up. I got to get to the theaters and see this right now. I am pumped for this one. So if you are someone who is Wizard of Oz narrative universe fan, boy, do we have a banger getting ready for us in the theaters right now. So make sure you all get your tickets. We'll have a little powwow on that on the backside of this. I'm stunned. Barely recognized Ariana Grande in this movie, but it seems like one that she is ready to knock out of the park. We hope you guys continue to think we're knocking this show out of the park. If you do, download, subscribe, rate, and review. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Go and hit the little bell. I'll learn all the lingo. You just do the subscribing. Thanks so much. Have a great weekend. We'll talk to you guys on Monday.